Player who I don't like. I can't wrap my head around why he's so highly regarded as a player. We've seen it so many times where a player rises because he's a athletic, like freak, a wing player, and that's Jonathan Kuminga. When I look at all the top players in this year's draft, and I have to pick a bust, those who are projected to go in the lottery, like he's the guy that stands out to me.
Yeah, I think I owe someone an apology. Jonathan Kuminga took some pretty significant strides this past season, and in this video, I want to look at the parts of his game that contributed to his success, look at some skills he could continue to develop, and his chances of winning a Most Improved Player award this coming year. I think the most impressive part of Kuminga's game is his ability as a finisher. And I know that's a pretty broad term, but both the numbers and the eye test will tell you that he is one of the most efficient finishers in the NBA. This past season, he averaged 10 points per game in the paint on the season that ranked 36th in the league. But in the months of January, February, and March, he ranked top 15, averaging about 12.6 points in the paint per game. That's ahead of players like Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, Kyrie Irving. It doesn't take long to see that Kuminga is an incredible vertical athlete, but what really stands out to me is his body control in the air. Whether that be finishing through players or around players, when Kuminga is attacking the basket, it's almost as if he's unfazed regardless of who's defending the rim. This past year, Kuminga shot 70.3% on 5.6 attempts per game inside 5 feet. There were only 10 players in the league more efficient than Kuminga with at least 5 attempts inside 5 feet per game. Giannis, Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, Evan Mobley, Nick Claxton, Daniel Gafford, Kyle Kuzma, Jakob Poeltl, DeAndre Ayton, and John Collins. With the exception of Giannis, Kuzma, and John Collins, you could pretty much classify all those players as centers, and not to say that it's easier to score at one position more than the other, but his efficiency around the basket is quite impressive given that he is the smallest player of that group. Also, in watching some of Kuminga's film, I noticed a couple of go-to moves he used quite a bit during this past season. He has this really nice turnaround fadeaway jumper. I feel like he has really good patience in the post when it comes to this shot, and just an ability to elevate over defenders, whether it be a mismatch or against someone who is listed as his primary defender. In terms of attacking the rim and getting downhill, I thought he used a lot of in and out dribbles and push crossovers, just an effective way of getting into the lane, and his quickness and acceleration combined with these moves really helped him get to the rim at a high rate. And I think this is an area where Kuminga could continue to develop. Every once in a while, we saw him utilize a combination of dribble moves to beat his defender. Given that he's already so efficient scoring at the rim, I think if he has more opportunities as a ball handler and continues to develop that part of his game, I wouldn't be shocked if his points per game average took another jump next year. Somewhat in the same vein of his ability to score in the paint, Kuminga is an absolute nightmare in transition. This past season, he was tied for 18th in the league in fast break points per game. Not much to dive into here, but I think with some of the additions that the Warriors made this offseason, notably DeAnthony Melton and Kyle Anderson, I wouldn't be shocked if the Warriors get more fast break opportunities from their defense, and I think Kuminga will continue to flourish in this area. I also want to quickly touch on Kuminga as a shooter. This past season, his three-point percentage regressed a little bit from his second season in the league, from about 37% to 32.1%. That being said, I feel like Jonathan Kuminga has really good form. I'm not an NBA shooting coach, but I also believe that there's no such thing as a perfect shot. No one way to properly shoot a basketball. I think he just has solid mechanics. He looks very fluid when he shoots the basketball. There's not a lot of movement in his elbows. Looks like he has a really solid base whenever he lines up for a jumper. Just some positive indicators of him as a shooter despite what his three-point percentage says. I don't know if he's ever going to develop into a top-tier pull-up shooter, but I really think he could make an impact as a catch-and-shoot player. This past season, he shot 44.4% from the left corner. That's about 6% better than league average. I wouldn't say that the Warriors are in dire need of shooters, but I think Kuminga is going to be a beneficiary of a lot of these kickouts. And if he continues to work on that part of his game, it'll only make him a better player. In the same breath, I would love to see Kuminga continue to work on his mid-range pull-up shooting. I wouldn't say this was a big part of his shot diet this past year, but circling back to those go-to moves I mentioned a bit earlier, I think if he can develop a consistent 1 or 2 dribble pull-up or a hesitation pull-up and add that to his arsenal, we could be talking about someone who's a perennial all-star down the line. Defensively, there's a lot to like with Kuminga as well. The word I would use to describe Kuminga defensively is versatile. He has the ability to defend point guards and power forwards. Kuminga also has great recovery speed. Even when it looks like he's gotten beat off the dribble, he always seems to find a way to get back into the play and make an impact defensively. Kuminga has a lot of those eye-popping plays defensively, whether that be rotating over from the weak side and getting a crazy block, or showcasing great anticipation in the passing lanes and coming up with a ridiculous steal. I think he knows how to utilize his athleticism on that side of the ball to come up with a lot of those disruptive plays. I think there's still room for growth as an on-ball defender. Like I just mentioned, he has great recovery speed, but of course that comes in instances where he's getting beaten off the dribble. I think he has the physical makeup and the athletic tools to be a great on-ball defender. I think with him it's just about consistency and showcasing that ability each and every night. There's a lot to like with Jonathan Kuminga, and what's really incredible is that next season he'll only be 22 years old. So I think there's still plenty of room for him to develop into a great player. And this past season was a big indication that he could do that. I know last year there were some reports that Kuminga wasn't seeing eye to eye with his coach, Steve Kerr, and he's also eligible for a contract extension this offseason, so hopefully both of those things get resolved. But regardless of what happens off the court, I think Kuminga is bound for a breakout year with the Warriors, and I'm really interested to see what strides Kuminga takes this coming season and in the foreseeable future as well.